would hope that people would see the film and look at how there are traces of their own life that are portrayed in the images there, and question their relationship with technology, or how the relationship with technology of people close to them might be affecting their life, and think about that situation and decide what they might need to do as a result of it. I recently read a quote where someone said, we often tend to fill what might be considered idle time in our life thinking about things that we think we need to do, when in fact those idle moments are times when, if we just rest and unplug and just let ourselves be for a while, that a lot of times the solutions that we've been looking for will come to us. But if we're constantly, desperately grasping to find an answer, to find a solution, it may just continue to elude us. And communication technologies can make it easier, because we can constantly look something up on the internet, fire off a text with a question to a friend. But taking a little bit more time to just let things simmer internally can be a really productive strategy too.
Artists, they are good observers. Artists are excellent observers. And they would see what we do with big, large-scale data sets, with data mining and information visualization. And they would bring value to these environments. And I wasn't sure that artists would actually start talking about database schemas with our data analyst, or talking about new algorithm designs with our programming lead. However, I thought they would really be wonderful to have to communicate some of the insights we had gained from our research and from the tools we have been developing over the last 15 years to a much more broader audience.
Well, I didn't want to make it like a character animation, and I don't want to make it look like, well, I want to keep it a little vague, and so people will focus more on the change of the texture, the change of the media, instead of what exactly happened on each character.
Actually, in some online games or games in general, you will see that the characters are purposefully less detailed so that you can better identify with them. So I think this is actually a very genius strategy. I like it. And I also like to see that I originally come from Germany, from Europe. Ying-Fang comes from Taiwan, and Norbert from America. So we actually have 3 continental views, which all ended up in that movie.
I realized that the sounds of the technologies themselves needed to be an important part of the soundtrack, and so I let that lead the way. So nearly everything you hear comes from some sort of communication technology. I dialed into the IU modem pool, and yes, you can still do that. And if you have a modem, you can dial into the modem pool here, and recorded that and got a great sound of dial-up modem. Most of what constitutes the music was made from computer operating system startup sounds. Everything really comes from a source that's directly related to what's portrayed in the movie, and I think that helped keep everything together between what you see and what you hear. I had to cut a number of things that I put in the initial sound design. I think it was early on in the project, and I hadn't really had a chance to fully understand their conception of the story. And so I was giving every single event that should make a sound, and it just didn't work. I think Ying-Fang's animation style almost rejected these sounds.
Like I said earlier, this subject is very it's very broad and open-ended and also very specific. So I was brainstorming with a lot of materials, especially things about Stone Age, because that is where the movie start. So then I saw some interesting cave paintings, so I start from there. And I start to animate some elements from cave painting. And then, well, that part also inspired the next part.
And I have been really deeply enjoying intermingling with other movie makers, with actors. So Norbert and I, we went to the Cannes Movie Festival and we dressed up and had fun there. Very different from normal scholarly conferences, I have to say. And I truly believe that the camera is one of the most powerful weapons. And if we can use this better as researchers and as scientists, I think we have much more impact on how our ideas and insights make it back to those which pay our salaries ultimately through tax money. In the connectedness, if you looked carefully, you also saw the global brain made out of many people and many computers connected to each other. But also the interconnectivity on our planet is now so strong that certain things and certain diffusion mechanisms are much, much faster than they ever used to be. Our world is much smaller because we can travel much faster. And that has all kinds of consequences in terms of how innovations are adopted and how far knowledge is diffused. And also has to the effect that kids today, they have to learn a ton of stuff in school. You know, every 2 years, or even 1.5 years, mankind's knowledge is doubling. How can you possibly learn that all? So what kind of education could you actually implement today so that kids have fun learning all this? I think it's also interesting for me to go to those festivals, which I have never been to, and to talk with people which I would otherwise never have talked to. So all the movie makers, all the actresses and actors, and many of them incredibly interesting people. But the question then also becomes, so how much of this world should we as researchers engage in? Because obviously it takes time away from actually doing publications or doing book writing or doing other normal scholarly activities. But I think it is important that it doesn't just stay in the ivory towers, but also gets known to others. And then the next question could be, well, why don't we just make documentary, like The Inconvenient Truth, you know, just many, many facts, many real life movie scenes. And actually many researchers now engage in these kind of documentary movie making productions. And I think it's highly beneficial for them as well. But when do you go and you go to the art side, or you go to a much more abstract side, or you go and do another Power of 10 movie? So what kind of style actually fits your own research and your own interest to communicate this research to your mom and to many others best? And that's really fascinating to me. So I tried to find always at all these movie festivals researchers that they're also making movies, and there are not too many. It's also expensive, and there's a limit of how many of those projects NSF is going to fund each year. But ultimately, I think there is a huge need for having more of those, and to potentially also broadcast them more widely in schools and cinemas like this wonderful IU cinema we have here.
Qu'est-ce que nous voulons?
Do you want this? What do you want?